We did it. Let's go, Duke. Wow. Defeating Alabama, heading to the Final Four. What a beautiful night it was as Duke basketball knocks off the Crimson Tide 85-65. On to the Final Four we go. Let's go, Duke.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Oh, yes. Hey, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson, the host of this program. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop devoted to everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics with a big-time focus on Duke men's basketball. And today we're talking about the big win as the Blue Devils knock off Alabama and advance to the Final Four. 85-65, the final score in today's game. We're going to be joined by Kevin Connelly, who's there at the Prudential Center to break it all down. Duke has cut the nets down, and they're on the way to San Antonio. Unbelievable effort from Duke in slowing down a very, very good Alabama offense. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review, particularly there on the Apple Podcast platform. And then watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Like our videos on YouTube and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Share these videos with your friends. Let's spread the word about this podcast that we've got and keep growing this Locked On Blue Devils community. The only daily Duke basketball podcast that you will find out there. Thanks for making us your first listen each and every day. So here he is. Kevin Connelly's here with us. What a performance it was for Duke, man. Fired up for you that you got a chance to be there in the building and a 20-point victory. Duke's going to the Final Four for the first time under Jon Scheyer.
Yeah, you know, JJ, it was kind of crazy because this team came so close a year ago, right? They got to the Elite Eight. They're playing NC State, a team that had beaten them in the ACC tournament, and you're thinking, okay, they're going to get some revenge on the Wolfpack, and they're going to punch through, and they're going to get to the Final Four, and it didn't happen. But it happened here tonight, probably against a more difficult opponent in Alabama, who came in as the top scoring offense in the country, averaging, I think, just over 90 points per game. They put up 113 in the Sweet 16 against BYU, and Duke holds them to 65 here in this Elite Eight. They shot 35% from the floor after making 25 three-pointers against BYU. They just go 8 of 32 against this Duke defense. And I don't think it was a perfect game for Duke, to be honest with you. I think they can play better, but the way they play defense, man, this team is something special. Even when they don't have their best offensive performance, and I say that with them still shooting over 50% from the field, they can lock you down from the field with their defense. So this is a special night for Duke. They're going to the Final Four. They're going to San Antonio. They'll find out tomorrow evening who they're going to play, whether it's going to be Houston, perhaps a rematch from last year in the Sweet 16 if Duke's able to win that game, or if Houston's able to win that game, or they'll play Tennessee, the team that knocked them out 2 years ago. So regardless of who they're going to play, or 2 years ago. 2 years ago. That's
yep.
right. Yeah, you know, sometimes it all just meshes together. But
it's late in the night, man.
You're right, but it could be a type of a game, revenge for one side or the other, regardless of who they play.
Okay, so it's a big win for the Blue Devils. And again, Final Fours are not guaranteed every single year, although at a program like Duke, you're more likely to end up there than at other places, thanks to what Mike Krzyzewski was able to build, and Jon Scheyer certainly carrying that out here as Duke's basketball head coach. In this game in particular, though, talking to the Alabama offense, they've got an All-American on the other side. His name is Mark Sears. He had 10 three-pointers against BYU. He scored 34 points. He finishes 2 of 12 from the floor, and Duke made it incredibly difficult for him to ever get comfortable at all. Late in the game, you're seeing him start to use his off arm, trying to create some separation. He's being called for offensive fouls. I mean, really just felt like time after time after time, the length of Duke's guards started to get into Mark Sears' head a little bit.
Not only the length of their guards, but the way they switch. And I think Kaman Malawash, this might have been his best game as a Duke player, given the stakes and given what was at hand. And the way he was able to switch on to many different players throughout the game, I thought was key for this Duke team. And then, like you mentioned, Tyrese Proctor is a bigger guard. Sion James, obviously, maybe isn't the tallest or lengthiest guy in the world, but he's just so strong and so physical, it's tough to get around him. I thought Duke did a great job on him. I thought their defensive game plan was great. And kind of as we mentioned on your episode that was posted on Friday morning after we were talking Thursday night about the Sweet 16, you didn't feel like Alabama was going to make 25 3-pointers again. If you had a bet, you were going to bet against that just because of they just broke an NCAA tournament record. What are the odds they're going to do it again? And obviously that was not the case. Duke held them to 8 of 32 from 3-point range. In fact, they only made 23 field goals in this game and 25 3-pointers. That's just the difference, right? 25 3-pointers a game ago, 23 total field goals in this game. But the Duke defense was something special.
Totally different. I mean, it was focused right from the get-go. Duke never trailed in this game. It was a wire-to-wire victory. And really, once we got into that second half and Duke was able to push it out to an 11-point lead right before the break, Alabama got a layup to go at the buzzer, so we had a 9-point margin there at the break. It never got closer than 6 points the entire second half. There was a stretch there late where Alabama went 5 minutes scoreless without even able to get a shot to go. I thought there was a really big moment where Mark Sears missed the front end of a 1-and-1 after a kind of questionable foul call, but maybe if he sees that one go down and through, some of the shots he started to attempt there towards the end, any great shooter, you see it go through once, that could be a difference there. But throughout the night, from the jump, like you talked about, it felt like Duke's effort was remarkable on the defensive end and really trying to push them away. Early on, a player like Aiden Sherrill, who's not the number one 3-point shooter that you're thinking about for Alabama, knocked down 2 of them. And it was like, all right, this is really serious. We've got to make sure we get out and contest these jumpers and even not let them take as many as they did the other night. And that's what Duke was able to do.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And also I want to go back to kind of what you talked about in that second half where Alabama did get within 6 a couple of times, and it felt like they had some momentum. Cooper Flagg got stuffed by Grant Nelson trying to put the hammer down and end this game early.
I wish we could delete that from the internet, man. I wish that would never have happened.
It happens to all time hoopers out there. You just got to tip your cap. Sometimes you get got. But, I think Alabama came down and hit a 3. I think it was Sears' only 3 of the game. And then a couple possessions later, they get an N1. That was kind of the point where you're looking around and you're thinking, Duke has been by far the better team. Duke has by far played better. But all of a sudden, it's a 7, 8, 6-point game. And you're like, all right, Alabama's right in this game. But every time the Crimson Tide made a push, every time they tried to get a little bit close, Duke was there with a response. And I think that's just shows the championship mentality of this team. And you have to give them credit because nobody besides Tyrese Proctor has been in this situation before. And I think Tyrese Proctor, I'm sure we'll get into it in your second or third segment, but I'll just preface it with this. He deserves a lot of credit, man.
Yeah.
Because he probably played the worst game of his career in the Elite Eight last year against NC State. He was 0 for 9, 0 of 5 from 3, just did not have it at all. And then tonight what he does goes 7 of 10 from the field, finishes with 17 points, kind of hits the dagger with about a minute to go on the wing 3, hit a couple of threes, rebounded, dished it out, was a playmaker. We already talked about his defense. A hat tip to him because this was kind of a redemption night for him after how he played a year ago in the Elite Eight against NC State.
And that's something Jon Scheyer talked about a good bit this week. They were bringing it up on the television broadcast of the game. Duke 13 minutes away from a Final Four last year. It was kind of the 13-minute mark in that game with NC State in the second half where the Wolfpack took the lead and Duke was never able to get it back. They played 13 more minutes of basketball here this year once they got to that big stage in the Elite Eight. And down the stretch, it really was somebody like Tyrese Proctor who really took them over the edge there. Knueppel, a team-high 21 points in the contest for the Blue Devils. I thought he was absolutely excellent for Duke as well when they needed somebody to be tough and to get the job done.
So Knueppel is such an interesting player, right? Because he is a great shooter. He can put it on the deck. In the first half, you saw a couple of spin moves that I'm not going to say you haven't seen all season, but when you look at him, you don't think he has that in his bag, and he showed it. But the other part is he does a lot of the dirty work for this team. Yes, we talk about Sion James and how tough he is, and he'll do anything to help the team win. But second half, game's kind of in hand already, and it's Knueppel who's still diving on the floor for loose balls. I think Knueppel, and especially with Cooper Flagg not having the best shooting night that he can have, going just 6 for 16, I thought Knueppel was absolutely awesome. And I can't call him an unsung hero, but he was the key in this win tonight for Duke.
Duke is heading to the Final Four. Truly special what they were able to accomplish there at the Prudential Center. We'll take a look at the box score and dive into a few more specifics when Locked On Blue Devils continues here in just a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I love checking out the FanDuel app because it's so fast and super easy to use. It's simple. I get the money. When I win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. That's one of the best parts. We talked about the other Elite Eight games coming up here on Sunday. Auburn and Michigan State. FanDuel right now has the Tigers favored by 4.5. And then a really good one. Duke's going to play the winner of Houston and Tennessee. And according to our friends over at FanDuel, Houston favored by 2.5. We'll be sure to see who wins those games and who Duke is playing coming up in the Final Four. But you can do all of that with our friends over at FanDuel. Again, just visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
You heard it right there from Andy Patton and Isaac Shade, our host of Locked On College Basketball. You could stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV. Now that Duke is going to the Final Four, I'll be back there. We'll be able to talk X's and O's with this Duke team as they get set for the upcoming week and a chance to win the 2025 National Championship. That sounds so good to say. All right, let's get back to our show. Once again, Kevin Connelly's here with us. We're talking about this Duke basketball victory that they had tonight over Alabama. The Blue Devils win it by 20 to end out the East region there with the Blue Devils coming out on top. We take a look at our box score here. Cooper Flagg finished with 16 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 4 turnovers, 1 block. We look at these numbers, man, and Duke just won by 20. And this is, not necessarily one of the Cooper Flagg games we're going to go down and remember when it's all said and done, man. What a performance all around from the team.
Yeah, 100%. And when you're in that last break, I kind of got distracted because I guess some of the guys of the players on the team are coming out of the showers or whatever, and they got some family members up in the concourse right above my right shoulder.
Tons of celebrating going on.
Yeah, yeah. So they're catching up with some family members. Like I think I saw Isaiah Evans and Malik Brown, Mason Gillis. I think Caleb Foster I saw up there too. So if anything goes on, any big stories break, I'll certainly pass them along before they get on the plane and head back to Durham. But no, with this game, it's kind of crazy when you look up and you saw the final score is a 20-point margin. And I kind of think that's indicative of how this game was played. And I know we just talked about how you looked around and it was still a game when Duke felt like they were dominating. But I think the final score was a lot more indicative of how Duke dominated this game from start to finish. And eventually it was reflected in that. One player we haven't talked about yet, Kevin Connelly. I think Connelly was huge. And I think you've seen specifically over these last 2 games in the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight of how his presence at the rim is opening things up. People are so focused when Cooper Flagg gets downhill and when Knueppel gets downhill on trying to bring their center to close out on them to provide a little bit of a double team. And JJ, we've had this conversation going back to July and August when those training camp and off-season workout videos were published, and Jon Scheyer says, like, you guys have a 7'2" guy in the center, throw it up to him
the ball,
and let him go get it. And you're starting to see that now on almost a possession-by-possession basis, is they're just throwing it up to Connelly, and he's coming down with the basketball, and he is scoring. He's created a soft touch around the rim that we saw here tonight against Alabama. He's able to catch these lobs, and when he has his 9'2" wingspan, plus how he can go up and catch his vertical and catch a basketball, he is becoming the X factor for this team, especially around the rim. And once teams start realizing, all right, our center is going to have to stay attached to him to prevent the lob, it just allows Cooper Flagg to go one-on-one or Knueppel to go one-on-one and get downhill for easy layups.
Unbelievable game for Connelly. 14 points, 9 rebounds, 2 blocks. And you're right. I thought he had such a big impact, particularly when you look at the game and look at the numbers with Alabama wanting to shoot so many threes. they just weren't playing defense that well, and that's the type of game you get into a lot of times when you're playing a team like Alabama who wants to run and gun. They want to play with a lot of pace. And Duke was like, that's fine. We'll come down on our end. Very strategic coaching by Jon Scheyer and his staff to want to slow this thing down a little bit, run pick and roll, and understand that because they want to get out and run, they're going to be tired. They're not going to be as committed likely on the defensive end of the floor. It is just an easy lob for us up at the rim for Mile to watch, because there were even a couple where the pass was bad and it was a turnover for Duke on the other end. I think that just goes back to we're sitting here looking at a 20-point win, and in so many ways, this wasn't even Duke's best game.
Well, it's crazy. So what two things that I want to touch on of what you said. First is Alabama and their defense. I think you look at Ken Pom, and I think they were top 30 or top 35 in adjusted defensive efficiency. But when you think about Alabama, you think about a team that doesn't play a lot of defense, like BYU scoring 88 points against them in the Sweet 16. We've seen other games where Alabama gets into these track meets against other teams. And I was kind of looking at those Ken Pom rankings, and I'm like, how is Alabama ranked so high in terms of their defensive efficiency? And it was an area where I thought Duke could really take advantage of. And I think they did, especially in that first half. And obviously they score 85 points and really put a bow on it. The other thing is, and we talked about it with Duke's defense, and you just brought it up with how Alabama plays in terms of their pace. They like to get up and down the floor. They like to take shots within 15 seconds of the shot clock.
Yeah.
And they weren't able to get clean shots off most of the time coming down the floor. You saw a lot of Alabama possessions go deep into the shot clock inside those final 5 seconds, and they had to take contested long jumpers against this Duke defense. So those were the two things coming into the game where a lot of people focused on Alabama, which was, okay, their defense is not as bad as you think it is, and their offense scores a lot, and they take quick shots. And Duke dominated both of those facets of the game here tonight.
Yeah, 20-point victory for the Blue Devils. They were able to really put this game to rest down the stretch because of their defense. Because, even if we look back at halftime, it's a 9-point lead. And at the break in this game, Kevin, Duke was 5 of 9 from three-point range. We've got the box score here on the screen, and you can see the Blue Devils finished 6 of 13 from three. Knowing how good Alabama is and figuring some level of halftime adjustments are going to be made at the break, if you would have told us that Duke is only going to make one three-pointer in the second half, I don't know, man. I'm nervous. I don't think this goes the way we want it to. I certainly don't think it's going to be a 20-point win at the end of the night. Duke made just 1 3 in the second half.
Yeah. No, but I think that was in large part due to Alabama's defense because they couldn't stop them getting to the rim. Now, I know on the screen here, Duke was 13 of 23 on layups. That's not the greatest efficiency you would like to have on those types of shots, but especially in that first half, Duke was using ball screens and getting downhill and getting easy looks or lobs for Malawach. So I think it's actually great that they only took 13 three-pointers because it shows that they weren't settling. They were getting to the rim. They knew that once they got into their action, they could have Alabama in the palm of their hands. And that's exactly what they did here tonight, not taking as many three-pointers as they did.
Yeah, we saw early, like Isaiah Evans come into the game. He gets the big dunk on a backdoor cut, a great pass from Gongba there. And then the very next possession, kind of a really forced and rushed three-point shot from Evans. And then we don't see him again the rest of the half, right? I think that was very evident when you're looking at this. Duke's like, we're not going to get into a shootout with this team. That's not the way to try and beat them. And because of that, you had to go to other players, and guys were ready to step up. Great point there only 13 attempts from three, man.
Yeah, and watching from the sideline, I was sitting right across from the Duke bench, and there were a couple times where we saw Alabama trying to pick up the pace, and Duke was ready to inbound and run right with them. But Jon Scheyer said, wait, calm this thing down, settle down, and then they'd walk the ball up the floor and get a good shot off. Other thing I want to say, and it goes back to the first half, Caleb Foster. Obviously, a lot was made about him, kind of out of the rotation in December, January, into February. We've seen the revitalization of him as of late. There was a sequence in the first half. I think Alabama might have gotten it down to 6 again. Maybe it was 5. And he was the one who had a big three-pointer on the wing. His only 3 of the game, only a three-pointer he attempted in the game, pushed the lead back to about 9, where Alabama had some momentum. I think that was a really big shot early in this game as well for Duke.
All right, so we're headed to the Final Four. Sunday, we will see who wins the Houston and Tennessee game to see who Duke is playing. We'll also see the winner of Auburn and Michigan State to see who's representing the South region there. Florida, crazy comeback win to knock off Texas Tech. So we're still in a world where all 4 1 seeds could make it to the Final Four. But we'll save that conversation throughout the course of the week here. I want to end with Jon Scheyer, the Duke head coach in his 3rd year, who's now tied Brad Underwood and Brad Stevens for the most wins for a D1 head coach within their first 3 years on the job at 89. I love reading you every day over at Ball Durham, Kevin, and you've had this kind of running column throughout the course of the year and really the last 2 years since Jon Scheyer's taken over, kind of addressing his stance as his status as a college basketball head coach. Pretty damn good, man. Pretty damn good now that we've got this Final Four added to the resume.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think we've seen his progression as well over these first 3 years as a head coach. And it's not easy, man. And especially it's so difficult following the legend.
Yeah.
And I'm not just talking about Duke basketball and Mike Krzyzewski. I'm talking about anything. I mean, if you want to bring in other sports, it's following Derek Jeter after he retired as shortstop of the New York Yankees. It's following Tom Brady after he retired as the quarterback of the New England Patriots. Fill in the blanks of everything else, and kind of what you've seen in head coaching ranks. Talked about just said New England Patriots, Bill Belichick. I mean, his successor has already been fired because he couldn't really fill his shoes.
Sure.
So I think the pressure was great on Jon Scheyer. JJ, we've talked about it on this program about the year, the transition year, and how great that was for Duke, naming a head coach in waiting, that it was Jon Scheyer, that he got that year to develop and kind of prepare himself for what was to come. And remember, that year, Duke went to the Final Four when he was the head coach in waiting, and Mike Krzyzewski's final season. So, I mean, he's been to the Final Four as a head coach in waiting, an associate head coach. He's been to the Final Four as an assistant. He's been to the Final Four as a player. So for the lack of knowledge that these players are going to have of what they're about to go into this week in the Final Four in San Antonio, Jon Scheyer knows what his team is going to get into. And yeah, I think there were some criticisms of Scheyer and the offensive development over the first 2 seasons, and even a little bit this season. And we talk about it a lot in those losses to Kentucky and Kansas, kind of running the same things late in a game, in a tight game. It was even brought up a little bit against Clemson, even though I pumped the brakes on that one and said, I mean, Clemson is not his fault because, I mean, Cooper Flagg slipping on a wet spot kind of lost him the game. So you can't really put that blame on Scheyer of losing a close game and having a turnover late and not getting a quality shot off. I think Jon Scheyer deserves a lot of credit. I think obviously he is a finalist for the National Coach of the Year. I think he has a good shot at winning it, which is kind of crazy to say because he wasn't the ACC Coach of the Year.
It's the big stuff.
So yeah, just to put a bow on this Jon Scheyer topic, he's done a heck of a job, and you could see the joy that he's having. You could kind of see some of that release once the game was over and the final seconds were winding down. And once he got up on the ladder behind me, they put a new net up already. I didn't even notice that. That was the net that the players and the coaches cut down, which is crazy because I think they're going to turn this back into a hockey arena soon. So I don't know why.
Why do we need a new net that quickly?
Yeah. I don't think basketball is going to be played here
save
again.
That for a Monday job, man. Yeah.
Well, I don't think basketball is going to be played again in this arena until November for college basketball when Seton Hall plays here. But that's besides the point. But yeah, Jon Scheyer, you could see how happy he was after the game, and just getting to this moment and getting over the hump, coming so close last year and finally breaking through and getting to the Final Four. But he knows there's still more work to be done. He knows he has the national championship favorite in his locker room, and he knows he has Cooper Flagg and all the attention that's been put on this team really from the summers. And he's done a phenomenal job handling it and just going with it in stride.
18th Final Four for Duke, the first for head coach Jon Scheyer. Bill Foster took the Blue Devils to a Final Four, 3 for Vic Bubas, and of course Mike Krzyzewski, 13 Final Fours in his Hall of Fame and legendary career. Duke now gets to go to San Antonio, and we are still eligible. We're still able to go and win a national championship, which is unbelievable. I can't wait to talk more about this upcoming week with you here on Locked On Blue Devils, Kevin, in the days to come. But tell us about Ball Durham and everything you have going on.
Yeah, so we got everything going on over at balldurham.com. Everything you could possibly want on this Final Four appearance for Duke. Obviously, the first couple days before the team heads down to San Antonio, we'll be recapping this Elite Eight and getting all the Duke fans as much content as we could possibly can. Also have to give a quick shout out to the Duke women's team playing in the Elite Eight Sunday afternoon, against South Carolina.
Yep.
We'll be on top of that with coverage as well. So who knows? We might have double Final Four coverage for you over at Ball Durham. But anything you possibly want, come over to balldurham.com and follow us on social media at @ball_Durham.
Talk to you later this week, Kevin, okay? That's Kevin Connelly joining us here on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils, and that's going to bring our show to a close here today. Big week coming up with Duke basketball heading to the Final Four in San Antonio. Please be sure to subscribe to our Locked On Blue Devils YouTube page. Follow us on X at @LO_Blue Devils. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're everywhere. Go and find Locked On Blue Devils. Engage with us and be a part of the community. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.